forward on this. Okay, perfect. So first of all, well, this is the title of the book, Fear Enough. And at some point, I would love your feedback about it, because I heard that it can be interpreted in multiple ways. So for some people, it's like enough fear. For others, is like fear enough, like have a lot of fear, right? Like that's a good practice. And basically both parts for me are super interesting, and basically that's how we selected the name. But the real thing is that I would like to share in the book a process of how to deconstruct fear. So how you identify what fear is, which kind of fear patterns do you have, and being able to unbuild a fortress of patterns of fear that you probably built in the past years. I wanted to be 100% thankful, because these pre-orders mean a world to me. Believe me, it's really important. It makes me accountable. It also helps me to not procrastinate and to finish with the product. I tried making the book twice already. I have 2 different versions of the same book stored somewhere there. And for some reason, probably fear, I never managed to publish it, right? So the topic has never been collecting dust for me, because that's a constant challenge I have. And it looks like I became kind of an expert or specialized in the topic of fear since a few years ago. Those years are almost 10, actually. And I can tell you how it started. And you probably know the guys from Samantha and Andras there. He was having a presentation in Maribor in one big conference, and he challenged the organizers of the event by questioning them if they do not learn from their failures. And that really struck me. I'm Peruvian, and a lot of South Americans like myself, we live with this inferiority complex. And the first thing that I got from Andras' question was, if we don't learn, I mean, if we are not learning from our failures, so why aren't we learning from our failures? South America failed 1 million times every week, and we still fail at the same kind of situation. So what is wrong here? Can't we learn from our failures? Of course, if you go on Twitter or anywhere else, you're going to find a lot of people telling you that you can learn from your failures. But then going deeper into the question, I found the reason why we can't learn from our failures, just like that. So, of course, we can learn from some of our failures, right? So if you are driving your car and you crash, you probably are not going to make the same mistake the next time, right? And there are also examples like learning to walk. You never manage to learn to walk if you are not falling. But those are really incomplete examples, and those do not explain why do we keep screwing it up, right? In so many different ways. So I started an event called Fear and Fail. This event was pretty successful. It happened in 5 different countries. I prepared or trained more than 60 speakers, and it was fascinating to see how they shared their stories. And after sharing their stories, they changed their lives. and some of them in incredible ways. So I found out that there's a relationship between fear and failure. So, and I also found that the reason why we cannot learn from our failures is because those fears are hidden in our personality. Okay, so that's pretty crazy, because that means that if you remove that fear from yourself, you're actually not you anymore. Okay, so and that's a very big reason for resistance, to remove your fear. So we don't want to remove our fears. We think everything is all right like we are, right? Therefore, we do our stuff and then we get stuck. When we get stuck, we make the question, what the hell is going on? This is already repeating too many times, but I cannot see what can I do better. So, but then you get a friend that comes back and tells you, hey, Jose, but you're repeating the same way of acting. You're repeating the same methodology. So why don't you change it? And then you figure, oh, of course, there's something there. So that's how it began. That's basically what the let's say discovery between big brackets, and that's why I think that it's so important to share the findings of those events and all these 10 years of talking about fear, because if we understand what fear makes, we might be able to see those patterns, to break those fears, and basically to become a better version of ourselves in terms of entrepreneurship, in terms of being a father, a husband, a couple, whatever, a brother, a sister, it doesn't matter, right? So basically, the book is about personal development, what is traditionally known as personal development, but I just can't make the difference between personal development and entrepreneurship, right? So, you know, in the old books of like, for example, Franklin Covey about leadership, they were idealizing that image of the leader. And everybody was like, yeah, but I want to be a leader. Is a leader born or is made? And the Franklin Covey was telling, it doesn't really matter. That's not the question. The question is that the leader emerges in the moment when she or he is needed. So leadership is not a position in the job, in your job or in your office. Leadership is an attitude that responds to a situation, right? So, and that's why in those books they were telling that the leaders can be the janitor of the company or can be the general manager. So basically, those books were suggesting that there's no real relationship between the manager of the company and the leader. But obviously, the industry understood as we want to hire managers that also are leaders. So then they brought this humongous responsibility to the managers by telling them, you have to be a manager, but at the same time, you have to be a leader. And these two functions, in most cases, are kind of incompatible, right? When you have to fire people, you're not very leader. You're using your authority to do something that is good for the company, but not necessarily good for the people. I think that the word entrepreneurship got into a similar situation. So I think of entrepreneurship in a very different way. To me, an entrepreneur is a person that wants to explore who she or he is, right? And he has a drive, she has a drive to do whatever it takes, you know, to discover something new. The example that I always give is the books from Jules Verne. The translations in Spanish, they were talking about the entrepreneurs, but what he was referring to were the adventurers. And those adventurers were trapped in a crazy situation, huge storm, or I don't know, some of these crazy, amazing adventures. And they saw no other alternative than to react to the environment and to do something proactive, right? So I think that those are the entrepreneurs. But of course, if I talk about entrepreneurship in those terms, I'm going to receive a couple of punches, because the majority of the people understand entrepreneurship as a business practice, as a methodology of how do you scale up your business, et cetera, et cetera. So it gets a similar confusion than the word leader and the word entrepreneurship, right? In this case. So with this book, I want to talk about the entrepreneur as a human being that is trying to achieve the best version of herself. And to do that, I'm going to try to question your the concepts that you have, the ideas that you already have about fear, about failure, about entrepreneurship. So basically, in this book, I'm asking for your patience, because you will find that you disagree with some of the terminology that I use and some of the concepts that I use. But that's part of the intention. And to be honest, that's the way I've been forever, being kind of a challenge to everybody else, especially my wife. So if you think about it, if you manage to come up with an idea of what fear means to you, what is the relationship of your fear and your failures, and then you transform these learnings into your business practice, your professional practice, right? You change your life. And if you change your life, it's very possible that you're going to be influencing other people to follow the example. And then you really become a leader, right? Someone that inspires others to move forward. And you will learn also how to trust in the process of life. So why the bad things happen, etc., etc. So now I have a question for you, and whoever that wants to answer it, just volunteer, okay? So why is the topic of fear important to you?
Can I volunteer? To me, it's an important topic because I identify this is one of the things that kind of holds me back in personal development. I used to be very fearful of social interactions where I was worried that they wouldn't go my way. So I was like scared to talking to people, and it's really hard. It really makes you like an entrepreneur. I feel like you need to be pretty good in terms of social skills. You need to sell. You need to be easy to approach. And that was something that I struggled with for a long time, and I'm still not great at. And I feel like I would have been much better if I wasn't being held back by fear of something happening that I don't want to happen, basically.
Super, thank you. Someone else?
For me, hi, I'm volunteering as well. Okay, for me, why the fear? Probably for the same as Andras, it pauses me, and I don't move forward. And for me, I was always expecting someone else to come and fix it for me. Probably something to do with the upbringing, and for me, it's a great pain that I will do a mistake. So if someone else does a mistake and I'm a part of it, I can take it much easier than if I'm the one who is in charge and make a mistake. Then it paralyzes me, and I won't do anything, and no action is for me. That fear paralyzes me.
Super. Thank you so much. What about you, Domen?
Why is it important? Well, I hate limitations, any kind, internal and external. It's like I feel constrained, and the fear for me is a internal constraint that if I cannot face it or resolve it, then I am constrained in my box here in my mind. And because I hate constraints or limitations in this way and want to be rid of them, I guess that's why it's important to understand fear and to then be able to solve it basically step by step and one fear at a time, and be progressively more free, because fear is both liberator and the inhibitor at the same time. It's has a double role. It's here to both teach us and also to it's an interesting thing from a conceptual standpoint. So yeah, one word is hating limitations and wanting to be free of them, to live a life where, you know, it's like as if I'm reading a book of someone else, and then they're doing all kinds of different interesting adventurous things, and I'm not. It's just an impossibility. Why am I not doing these things? Smaller, greater, whatever. So it's one of the most important topics to me.
Super. Thank you so much. So as you were saying, right, it limits your experience, it limits your action, and I believe that in a global sense, you can explain almost everything by fear, right? So when we see how the politics goes, how the wars are being sold as good or bad in both directions, and when we see the tactics of the powerful groups to achieve their agendas, they normally use fear to move forward, right? We do the same, huh? I mean, so it's not only the powerful, it's all of us. I mean, we do it in our micro scale, but we manipulate people using fear techniques, right? So to little children, we can say, if you don't make your homework, you don't get the chocolate. And very little stuff that actually are fear tactics and condition our way of thinking, so that we believe then that if we don't do this, something negative is going to happen, and we can't escape from it because it's the way our brain got wired, right? But something that I learned in these 10 years is that fear is very much like being in a dark room, okay? So you have a big dark room that you never saw in your life. So you just wake up and you don't know where you are and it's dark. So if you imagine that situation, and I make you a question, how much light do you need to illuminate the room? You would probably agree that the minimum amount of light is enough, right? So if you have a candle, that's good enough, because that little candle is going to illuminate your next few steps, and you can map the entire room and know how it is, right? So I think that that's the way that we work with fear. Give me a second that Bernie is joining. So basically, that small amount of light is the light of awareness, and our awareness is limited. Hi, Bernie.
Hola, lo siento.
Don't worry. So basically, that small amount of awareness illuminates enough of that fear pattern so that the next time that you engage in a behavior that responds to that pattern, right, you cannot unsee it. You remember, oh my God, that's the freaking fear we were talking about. And the next time happens the same, and the next time happens the same. So it's like walking in the dark room with your little candle, illuminating little by little the whole environment. And at some point, you already know it. And that means that you understand when that pattern came to be, right? And suddenly you are not victim of that fear anymore. So that doesn't mean that you became the Buddha, right? Because I can assure you that as soon as you get free of one of these patterns, you're going to find others. Okay, but that's exactly the process, right? So it is a lifetime process where you start finding out little by little more about who you are. But as I said at the beginning, when you remove that pattern from your personality, you become another person. You become less of the person you think you are today, right? Let me give you an example, okay? So you might think that you're a perfectionist, for example, okay? That's an example that I love because I see so many people feeling proud of being a perfectionist. But then when I tell them, hey, but do you know that perfectionism comes from an insecurity, comes from believing that you are not good enough, therefore your activities or the result of your work needs to be perfect so that you are associated with the perfection of your outcomes, of whatever that you do. Oh my God, then these persons look at me like, bastard, get out of here. And because they really can recognize that there's at least something true in what I said. So there is a recognition of a pattern, right? And then they don't want to listen because then who am I if I'm not a perfectionist? What, am I a mediocre? Right? So the reason why a lot of us reject the concept of fear and do not want to listen to it is precisely because we intuit that by releasing or transcending or transforming our fears, we become someone else. And that might be true, right? The importance of the process, in my opinion, is that if all of us, we start deconstructing those patterns of fear, becoming freer persons, we have an immediate effect in the communities where we interact. And for instance, we affect the systems where that basically operate those communities, right? It is not the objective. So I'm not saying you finish reading the book and you will become the hero of your communities and you will transform them into free environments. But what I believe is that what the rest of the people will perceive from you is kind of a sense of authenticity, because they see your vulnerability, they see how you grow, and they like that idea. All of us like authentic people. We all reject when a seller calls you on the phone trying to sell you a bank insurance, right? So why? Because those persons are not being authentic. They are inauthentically trying to convince you of something, right? So we all have an incredible bullshit detector. And when a person is behaving authentically, we really like that. And we tend to follow those persons. So, Bernie, may I make you a question?
Usually I charge for this, but I can on this occasion.
Yeah. So what do you experience if you wake up and feel no fear?
Ooh,
For that question, I can charge you now. So you just
I think
imagine,
it's-
right? So you wake up and you have no fear. What do you do?
it's so it depends what. Like some mornings I wake up and exactly like recording a podcast, it's like, oh my goodness, I can't do this. I'm scared. I'm going to run away. And other days I wake up and I'm like so pumped that I'm motivated, and that's the feeling. I'm like motivated, inspired. I feel free, and it might be exactly the same type of person I'm podcasting with, but it's like a state of mind. And who knows why some days exactly the same activity is fearful, and some days it's not. But it is. So if I wake up and don't feel fear, it is freedom, motivation, and inspiration. That's my answer.
Super. That's a fantastic answer. So basically, if we imagine not being afraid, waking up and not being afraid of anything, we would say, I would do whatever I want, right? Whatever I like doing. And as you said, Bernie, when you do what you love, actually you feel energized, and you feel motivated and inspired, right? That's this sense of flow that many people talks about. And that's why I wrote this. Fear is the key to experience freedom. So basically, when we talk about freedom, we are not talking superficially about doing whatever I want. Because as Domen said before, he wants to do whatever he wants, but his fears are not letting him. Right? And it's not that in all the cases those fears are apparent or obvious. It's just that one doesn't know why I cannot do this thing that I want to do. 10 years that I'm trying to do this and I cannot do it, and I don't know why. Right? So to me, freedom is freedom from fear, from the fear patterns. And stuckness is precisely the opposite. Is being surrounded by fear patterns that doesn't let me grow anymore, doesn't let me move anymore, and I find myself kind of trapped, right? So great. So I think that at least with this brief conversation so far, we understand the premise of the book, right? So what I want to talk about, and now I would like to share with you a bit more of how I plan, so how the book is actually right now written, okay? So I tell stories, so things that happened to me or things that I heard or that I read, and I identify in them the topic of fear, failure, and then I connect those stories with some concepts, okay? Like, for example, the concept of entrepreneurship or the concept of fear itself or failure, etc. And those concepts are words that are important for anyone reading the book to understand what's coming next, okay? So those concepts, you don't have to agree with them, but you have to pay attention to them, let's say, so that you compare your own definitions, the definitions that I share, so that you come up with your own conclusions. So you go through a process of reflection. And then the book continues and trying to support you in a process of recognition of patterns. So that you start finding out what are those patterns in your personality that you think are part of you. I mean, even positive parts of you, right? That are actually the ones that are limiting you. So once you recognize those patterns, it's like when you light the candle in the dark room. So then you can continue walking and discovering more and more about the fear. And well, the book in every single chapter presents you questions and calls to action that you're free to follow or not, but you're strongly encouraged to do so, so that actually you engage in a process of change, right? Now, the idea of the book, and that's the idea that we built with Yerney, basically doesn't want to stay in a flat and plain book. We want to create kind of a community around it, so that we can continue. First of all, I can continue improving this work, but the participants, the persons that bought the book, the persons that belong to the community can start interacting and sharing their questions, their ideas, their critics or criticisms, etc., so that I can continue working on it. Because I found that there is not really a lot of agreement in the world, even in academia. I read a few books from psychology, and I read some books from neuroscience, and none of them really agree. So I think that it would be super amazing if we get empirical information and real life experiences from you and whoever else that participates in the community, so that we can expand this book and therefore come up with multiple versions of it that will be available to all of you. So I talked a lot already, and I would love to know if you have some questions, some expectations. What would you like the books to cover? What you wouldn't like to see, etc., so that in this final phase where we are editing, removing things, adding few details, I could respond to those requirements. Please feel free to volunteer.
I wanted to ask a question about kind of the structure. I read a lot of different like kind of self-help books for personal development, and some books are really great, but then like the idea is great, but when you kind of get to the end of the book, there is no like specific like process or steps outlined for you to take to actually put it into life. So it's kind of very inspirational, but it takes a lot of work to kind of figure out how to actually do it. And I had trouble with those kinds of books to actually put that kind of process into practice. So I want to ask is like, are you planning to have something like that, some kind of framework, some kind of like steps you can take, like really dumbed down, so you can't like, you don't leave anything to imagination? Are you planning to do anything like that in the book?
Yes, so that's a critical question, and my answer might not be the one that you are expecting. So I'm making throughout the book and on each chapter specific questions that are very much directed for you to come up with specific answers that will connect with the next topics that go in the next chapters. Okay. The thing is that if I present a step-by-step guide, that will not reflect your relationship with your own fears, and at the same time the relationship from Domen and his own fears. So I think that there is no one specific process, but there is a general framework that I think it works in every single case. Okay, and I can tell it to you right now. You find your patterns of fear in every single failure you had in your life. We don't learn from our failures because we focus on trying to understand the mechanics of this failure. What did you do and what you didn't do? What the team did, what the team didn't, right? But the real thing is why you didn't. And in that why, with a few questions, you're going to find out what was the fear.
Okay.
And then you're going to see, oh my God, so I have the same thing with everything else. Right? So then you see the fear, you cannot unsee it, and therefore you start transforming it. So there's no much more that you need to do. It's not that you have to face your fear and I don't know, jump from I don't know where, or it's not needed.
Feel the fear and do it anyway.
Sorry?
Feel the fear and do it anyway.
Exactly. But before doing it anyway, you ask yourself, why? So what is the name of that fear? You have to identify it. And it is not only on future-oriented things. So why I don't want to do this, but or why am I feeling resistance to do this? But why did I fail in the past? How is that pattern contributing for me failing all the time? At different levels, right? You never fail exactly in the same way. The mechanics are different every single time. But the core, at the core, you will find that it's the fear that is affecting. And although we might have 1,000 fears constructing our personality, I'm completely sure that if you identify 3 or 4, you start a process that is actually automatic, that cannot stop. Right? So the framework is in the book. The questions that are going to call you to reflect are in the book. And I think that there is enough empty space for me. So I'm not telling some things on purpose, because I'm trying to call every reader to take the time to reflect, right? Because I think that that's the difference. All the other books that I also read, the self-help or whatever, they want to be very specific in which kind of things you need to do in order to get this result, but they fail at that. At least the majority that I've read, and the reason is because they don't give you space to reflect. So then you basically start doing something. So this Monday I start, right? And then you start following this stuff, and you are not pausing to interpret what is going on. You don't really know why you are doing it. You hope that if you do these steps, you are going to see something that you couldn't see before. But at least in my experience, that's not how it works. It's the other way around, right? Is you have to first think about it. Knowing that your fear is paralyzing you is not enough. Fear basically is kind of an alarm system, and it prevents you from change. That's it. So fear itself doesn't have any negative implication, right? The negative implication comes in our head because then we interpret the alarm, right? And the interpretation of this alarm is what creates all the troubles. So that's why we need to go to find out the deepest we know about that fear, from where it comes, in order to deconstruct it. And then it becomes a domino effect kind of thing.
That makes sense. I think it makes sense. I understand some things are just too, like the situation are just too different to give a recipe. What I found to be really awesome, I'm not sure if we're going to include that, like, are just examples of how somebody applied that and that worked out for them. and you can be very specific, but it's just that specific person. Why that really helps me is like, it really helps me go into detail, because sometimes you just need to start somewhere, like an imperfect way. And then some books I really love, like one was like Getting Things Done. I read it multiple times because the first time around I just implemented the process, started working, but it wasn't perfect. I did 2 more times, and then I really got all the details. And if I just tried to do it straight away, I think I would have completely failed. So yeah, that's kind of my comment. But I think I like the idea because it's very simple and probably doesn't need so much explanation maybe in the end, because it's really simple, and that's really nice.
And actually having the community, right, and the ability to interact, that means that at any moment you just reach me out and said, hey, look, this is what I did and nothing is going on. Where am I screwing it up? And I'm going to be very happy to come up with potential answers, right?
Awesome.
So good. Someone else have some other question or suggestion?
I have one. How does no fear corresponds to wisdom? So if I do what I like to do, but it's some kind of bad for me in the long term, how do I check it if this is stupidity or is this holding me back?
Yeah. So the word wisdom is, I think, the ultimate word. We are in this civilization of knowledge, right? And what we think is that knowledge is power, and you see that the IT community that I'm identified with still persists on big data and this kind of terminology that tries to keep the power of information. I'm not saying that information is not powerful, but what I'm saying is that knowledge and information is not the same than wisdom. In my opinion, wisdom is very much about knowing what to do when, right? And it's not necessarily to get the better results. Because as soon as you become wise, you start realizing that positive and negative outcomes are circumstances and inevitable, are not part of your power. So you don't decide under the condition of, if I do something, then I expect this result. So another concept that I got about wisdom is getting close to truth. And truth is defined by some cultures as beauty. Okay, so truth is not necessarily the same than fact, right? So is it true that this person killed this other person? Okay, there we are talking about facts, right? And we can say, yes, it is true, or no, it is not true. But when talking about truth, not a specific case, if this is true or not, then it's very difficult to define, right? What's the truth about humanity, right? What's the truth about nature, or whatever? So you can go very philosophical, but if you find the beauty on the question, so what is the beautiful thing about humanity despite the ups and downs? You are going to come up with some answer, right? And then you can ask yourself, is that answer true? And you're going to find that it is true. And it has to be true not only at that precise moment, but in a period of time. So then, because when time passes, you see that negative things of the past become positive things of the present. Therefore, you also know that whatever negative thing that happened already is bound to produce positive outcomes. And the other way around. Maybe you got the lotto, you became rich, and you know how it goes, right? what's the common sense? A lot of the people that gets all this amount of money end up worse than how they began. So there's no positive and negative, and there's a lot of things that are away from your control. So then wisdom becomes being able to navigate in that uncertainty. It is not bound to a specific desired result. It's very bound to your present feeling. You know, how are you feeling your situation at this moment? I don't know if I confused you more or.
No, maybe I will be more concrete. Sometimes you do things out of fear of the consequence. So if you get if you're asked something to do or something, and you fear for your, I don't know, material wealth or something like that, can you do it? But you did it out of fear. And if I had no fear, I would say to that person, maybe go after yourself or something like that. And that maybe would not be wise, because I would have some bigger, that's my corresponding, when it's when it's wise not to jump and not to overcome your fear or just understand it. Maybe it's not fear, maybe it's for the better, if you understand what I mean.
Correct. So my answer would be, if at this point you can afford to be true to yourself, so to be wise, and say no to those persons, right? You do it, and you will see the freedom and the super green that you're going to get. But you have to know that every decision has a price, and there's a price that you will have to pay. So if you lose your job and you can afford it, awesome, then you get another job, right? And the amazing thing is that the next time, the pattern is going to be different, at least, right? But that doesn't mean necessarily positive. If you keep doing that, you're going to be so free that you might not be employable. But is it being employable and sacrificing your freedom worth your life? The answer might be yes, right? Depends on your circumstance. I have a lot of kids, or I have a big family and I have to take care of them. I will have to sacrifice my life for them to be all right. Totally okay. That's wisdom also, right? But and so that's a crazy thing, that being free of your fears has a cost. It is a very big cost, because actually you are not conforming to what the rest want you to conform. I think that Bernie wants to say something, or Domen.
No, I was just scratching my head because it's hurting from the conversation. It's but go on, Domen.
I think I wanted to add to the previous round between Islam and Jose. It was it seems like fear is there as a protector as well. It gives us, like a child that is afraid of something, like getting burned again because it was burned before. It's afraid to be burnt again, so they don't do a certain thing. So I guess that's what I wanted to say. Something in this region of thought.
Did you have some question, Domen, or Bernie?
What I'm interested in. Oh, did you go?
No, that was. So it was not just a thought. It was basically, I wanted, because I knew Islam wanted to then say something, and I wanted to throw this into the discussion that you two had, was this whole thing of is being fear. Imagine a state of being totally fearless or fear-free. As would this be ideal, especially for this common person, average person situation?
Okay, so under my understanding,
Mhm.
I would say that there are different kinds of fear. Okay, so one fear is the instinct of fear, so that is trying to preserve your life.
Mhm.
Basically, you can't avoid it, right?
Mhm.
But then there are these other fears that are called psychological fears that are man-made, are part of your experience. So those are the ones that you can undo. Of course, if a tractor is falling on you from a high building,
Mhm.
you would be really stupid of trying to say, I'm not afraid,
Mhm.
you can kill me. So that's not the thing. So fearlessness is not being afraid of anything and crossing the street even if the cars are at full speed. Not at all, right? It has so there are some fears that are there to help us protect our life and our physical integrity. But there are the majority of the fears of these times. Maybe when we were cavemen, it was different, but today the problem is a psychological one, that we start believing that those patterns are useful to us and that there's nothing wrong with them, that we should keep them. You can keep them, but you're going to suffer the consequences of that limitation, right? There's no problem. You can leave them. And actually, when you unbuild those processes or fears, you experience other parts of yourself. So you expand your personality, let's say, and that expansion creates other problems. So working with your fears doesn't mean that you are going to live happy ever after, but it means that you are going to experience freedom, more freedom, right? You are going to be able to know more about yourself, let's say.
Jose, they mind me adding a thought I just had on this topic.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, in terms of, that kind of, that fear kind of holds us back from making poor decisions in the end, right? And yes, it does. It also holds us back from making great decisions. And if we had no fear, would we be free to make bad and good decisions? Yeah, for sure. And should we then be fearful just to have some kind of insurance not to make any bad decisions for the price of not making any great decisions, right? I feel like in this case, fear is just some kind of a blocker that prevents us from executing on what we decide to do. And if we made a poor decision or a good decision, doesn't necessarily have to do much with fear. And making a good decision is much more than not fearing. Making a decision, it's probably doing research, probably thinking about it, probably making a good plan, right? So it feels to me like not necessarily. If everybody was 100% rational, had zero fear, maybe it wouldn't be a problem. But nobody's 100% rational, and probably even by knowing everything about fear, you probably can't be without fear anyway. So
the difference, the huge difference is the level of consciousness that you have when you engage with the decision. So when you are more free, you have more perspectives to evaluate your decision, right? When you are fearful, your fear is the one setting the boundaries of what you can see, right? And that's why they're saying you need multiple perspectives in order to make a good decision. But how are you going to make a better decision if your mindset is the same than always? And that's why we get into this cycle, right, of repeating the same mistake constantly. So the process of fearlessness, or removing or deconstructing your fears, is basically a process that gives you the opportunity of watching the situation from a different perspective or multiple perspectives to make better decisions. But remember, good decisions and bad decisions are going to bring you or good outcomes or bad outcomes in any order. And as I said before, you can get a good decision that gives you a good outcome that destroys the future of your life because you are completely out of control, basically. Everybody is out of control, right? And the difference then is that the person that is trying to control the situation is fearful. And if you think about how you imagine a fearful person, you will see a lot of tension, you will see a lot of anxiety, right? So, okay, do you want to live your life anxious? Or do you want to live your life with less anxiety? Right? So when Islam was talking about wisdom, this is so important, right? Because obviously a wise person, right, is that person that is understood how to live a life without too much tension. You know, I invite you to come to Murska Sobota, and we go to some of the farms here around, and you will see the farmers. They have the great BMW car, it doesn't matter. And they live easy lives. I mean, it looks easy at least. They are relaxed. They do not understand the anxieties that the rest of us are living. You know, totally fine. They decided to be like that. Right? So I think that if we mix a bit of all this, we can come up with a middle point where you can enjoy the results of your work so that you get a good salary and you buy comfort, you know, but at the same time you understand that the purpose of your life is not working, but living a better life through your work, through your hobbies, etc. It doesn't matter how, but it's the level of consciousness. How conscious are you of the decisions that you're making? So it's not rationality. Rationality is always limited, right? In the book, there's a story about this Andean woman, 5,000 meters in the Peruvian Andes, that identified me as a person from the city. And she said to me, "Oh, yeah, you are from the city, right?" And I said, "Yeah." Why? You're the kind of persons that are telling us ignorant. And it's true. The people from the city think of the people from the Andes as ignorant people. And she said, "Don't you see that the ignorants are you?" And I said, "How come?" And she said, "Because you think you know." She changed my life with this stuff. Because true, I was so sure of my assessment about people that I couldn't see my own ignorance. And what she said is, I'm not educated. I was not in school. That's true. But I know what I don't know. I'm not trying to convince anybody that I know more. Right? But the city people, at least from my city, we are like that. So that's incredible, right? So because even the idea of rationality as a way towards success is really about strategy. It's completely incomplete. Okie dokie. So I don't know if someone else has some few comments or a question, last question. Otherwise, we close the call of today.
I know you asked how, like, about the comments on the title. And I just wanted to say I like the title. I think it's good. Like, at least to me, my vote would be to keep it.
Super. Thank you. Bernie, did I screw up your head?
No, it was quite hard moving from walking down the road, eating empanadas, shouting with two children to come into this conversation. But I'm glad I came. the fear thing is very interesting at the moment because there's been a lot of changes. I've been moved country and stuff, and then I don't want to. It's too late to start a conversation now, and I'm sure we'll all meet again. But I'm forever fascinated with the idea of resistance. So there's the fear of, I don't want to do something because I'm scared what will happen, and then in our case is the resistance to making a podcast and the resistance to blogging and the resistance to doing things that would further your career or visibility. I don't like the word visibility, but it's like, oh dude, I was talking with a friend this morning, Sangeeta. We both blog and podcast and we live for it, but then we're like, oh, I'm creatively blocked, oh, I've got writer's block. It's, there you have it, just like get on with it, and that kind of fear, as well as that deeper fear that we were talking about in the last few minutes, versus the fear of getting on a roller coaster at Disney is really easy for me, even though I'm absolutely petrified. I'm more worried about vomiting on the people behind me than the actual anything crashing. But I know it's very interesting. But thank you very much, Jose. I think it's a great little idea to get people together to talk about the book. I really appreciate when authors do things like this.
Thank you so much, Bernie. So
Mucho everybody.
I'm going to be sending you an email and the other persons that pre-ordered the book that couldn't make it today with the introduction and the first chapter for you to give a check. Please feel free to contact me directly and tell me what you think. If you would like something different, you can do it. And if you want to start a conversation, just ping me. I'm available so that we can go into more specifics, okay? Thank you again for the pre-order. This really means a lot to me. And I hope to be in touch with you pretty soon. Now you have my contact information, so please don't be shy. And if you think that someone else would benefit from this kind of calls and from the book, feel free to share information with them. That would also support me a lot. So that's it for today, and I wish you a really good evening. See you guys.
Bye.
Take care. Ciao, ciao.
Bye.
I will stop now. Are you staying there, Domen?
Me.
Hello.
Who's left? Hello, baby.
So was it too complicated?
Of course, it's you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's as Bernie said, it's especially coming after empanadas. It's quite a show. But,
yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I guess so. But
But
that's
it gives you enough to think about stuff. So that's also good.
At least everybody knows that the book has some complex information, and the part of examples of others going through fear, that could be very beneficial. I agree. So I think that I have some examples there, but I might put some more.
Very good.
You're worthless.
Yeah.
Wordless, not worthless.
Wordless.
What are you talking?
I think it was good, but if you're gonna do this, I don't know if you're gonna do something like this more often, or was this like a one-time production? If it was a one-time production, then it doesn't really matter. If this is like a semi-tour of the book, then you should do more slides, like more micro. So you have to move the slides more often, otherwise people fall asleep. That's what some of the things we had with Sahel Bloom, for example. Like he had 120 slides in 2 hours. Yeah, so it's slide, right? Or 60 slides, so one per minute or one every 2 minutes. So people, something visual that changes the attention. It's very hard to be focused on one person. The questions were great in the middle to break it up, but you need more of that. So there needs to be, we call these like pattern breaks or something like that. So they're woken up. So if this was like 100 people, you would do like breakout rooms, or 50 people or 20 people, breakout rooms. Here you just do yourself, ask a question or do an exercise or something, or hey, go into, I would add some stories from the book inside. I would actually just include some of the book itself within the, you know, the whole, you know, a slide would be a book screenshot or something with a story, with a picture of this person, and go into a story. But like I said, if this was a one-time production, then it's okay. But if this is going to be like a tour thing, or you can even, you know, this can turn into a live course kind of a thing, as per Sahel Bloom or any of these, you know, cohort-based courses. Then it needs to be obviously polished and those kinds of things. Like live courses, what's really important is not the monologues or the what you say. It's more that what they do is the exercises, is so it's putting the ball onto them. Otherwise, it's not a live course, and not a live course. It's a presentation. It's like
so
a
that
lecture.
was basically my
It's a
intention, to make a presentation for them, maybe get some feedback, and actually to keep them engaged, because the book is still not in their hands. So I wanted this to be kind of let's get in touch and let's start getting to know each other, right? So who we are.
No, no doubt. It's great. As what it was great. But I think this is more of like my thought process, my idea, which I already tried to push you into like a year ago when I first started doing these live courses, is that you should be running a live course alongside the book, either to new customers or so this should be like a community book live course. This could be one thing where you know, you basically, you have 3 entry points. You sell a book, then you sell a higher up product is the live course, right? It's a more expensive thing. So book is $20, this is $200 or something. You know, it's for you to expand your it's like a, you know, productizing yourself. So you have like
definitely
ladders
definitely that's in the pipeline. But first we have to finish the book. I didn't want to have it in parallel, but first we have the book, we have something that you can buy before, then we have the training course. It can be even a one-on-one, because I saw the eyes.
That's another thing. That's another product you have.
Yeah,
it's a one-on-one.
Excellent. I don't know, Yarne, if you have something to say. We're interrupting your walk.
No, I'm just enjoying listening in on the discussion. So no interruptions here.
Where are you, Yarne? What's this building?
Going straight to Loliterk.
Nice.
Super. So in your opinion, Yarne, anything to add?
No, not really. Just Andras was the other guy, right?
Yeah.
When he mentioned some kind of examples, I think it's now you have what, 4 to 5 people that might be the first ones to go through the book and start applying those things. So then it's one more level of stuff you can put on the courses. So you have actual case studies, which again don't fit to anybody, but there's a kind of like backstage look into how everybody approached it, and maybe you can get some more stuff out of it. So that's good.
You know, what can this be? The fear and fail events. So that the speakers can be those cases, because they are going to be sharing their freaking story in 15 minutes, and that can be part of the cases, right?
Yeah. So I think this whole thing is like all interconnected. If you can pull this out, this whole thing is one thing. This whole fear enough is basically this whole thing of the point. If you remove all the products, is a transformational journey through fear into this, from here to here, where you've gone through this transformational journey through all these services or products, and at the end of it, you have advanced meaningfully in your life. to another stage, either in business or in your career or arts or life or friendships, so whichever of 6-7 areas of life.
Shit, that
Mostly,
sounds
of
so
course,
beautiful.
it's the creative process.
Excellent.
Yes.
Super. Hey, thank you guys. Thank you for your feedback and for your constant support. Okie dokie. So then I leave you free. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and we hear each other like always, anytime.
Yes.
Okay. Deal.
Hugs.
Ciao, Jose.
Love you.
Bye.
Take care. Ciao.
Ciao.